to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton, and welcome to an injury update where I'm joined by Terry again, and we're going to go over the news that Everton continue to have bad luck on the injury front. We did a show on Jean-Philippe Bannon last week and Yerry Mina, but since then our problems have mounted. Now Theo Walcott's got an injury, and Fabian Delph was also confirmed as injured this morning. And there's also, of course, rumours circulating that Andre Gomes is injured as well. So there's a lot to cover, and it all seems to be bad news. Terry, this is Everton we're talking about here. It never rains, but it pours. What's your take on these injury updates?
It's just standard Everton, isn't it? It's just always us. Whenever we're going into a derby, injuries, and we're getting injuries in like similar positions as well. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'd rather not have some I won't mention any names to tempt fate, but I'd rather not any strikers get injured, put it that way. I think you figure out who I mean from that. But they all seem to be in central midfield or positions like right midfield where we haven't got a lot of depth. But I don't know. I mean, Andre Gomes could be fit. It was a little bit confusing with when his injury was and, what have you. But from what I can understand from just looking around all the different sources reporting it, there was bits, Gomes replied to someone on social media saying he's had enough sitting on the sidelines during the lockdown and with his ankle injury. I think he was injured this week, from what I can make out, and he's back in training on Monday. That doesn't mean he's definitely going to be fit for the derby because, you never know, especially with Everton. But I don't think he's completely out. And there's also, that a little bit, touch and go with Fabian Delph. I'd be surprised. They're not speaking as if he's going to be fit, but they said he's doubtful. So you never know. But yeah, from what it could be, what looks like it was going to be Andre Gomes and Kabaman in centre midfield going into the rest of the season, and now maybe we might be starting with Tom Davies and Gylfi Sigurdsson, which is I'll just say it's not the same.
Well, yeah, we've spoken the Vaman update about this, didn't we? Our wonder strength on midfield is, of course, Delph's injury adds to that. Schneiderlin's injured as well, and now possibly Gomes. There is only Sigurdsson and Davis left as far as senior midfielders go, but there is obviously a void then on the bench which needs filling, and we've got to use some of the lads from the under-23s, which will be a good opportunity for them, won't it? Like, they should be chomping at the bit to seize any chance to break into the first team, but if you're looking to the under-23s, who should we be looking at from the squad who could make that step up?
Well, these 9 games, I mean, it's unfortunate our first game is Liverpool. Like, if the last game was Liverpool and our first game was, say, Norwich, I don't think anyone would be as panicked as they are now. It's just the sheer, rotten luck that we're going into a derby with all these injuries. But, I mean, these lads are going to get a chance. I mean, they've already, there's an Athletic article which listed loads of players who could see minutes who are training with the first team. You've got, your centre-back, Jared Brandthwaite, you've got Moise Keane who will play more. Anthony Gordon's been sounded out by Ancelotti, publicly. Centre midfield, probably Benny Beningame. I know he doesn't feel like a young lad at the minute because we've seen him before and it was a while ago, but, he is still very young and, he's a capable player. Like, he's had his injury troubles. I think he's played in the derby before at Goodison, I think, a couple of years ago.
Really?
Yeah, he did. I can't remember how he did, but how he got on. But I think he has.
Allardyce was the manager.
Possibly, I'm not sure. But yeah, I think he has played in the derby before. I've got a memory of him playing against Liverpool, but this is the opportunity right the way throughout the league. There's not going to be as many signings in the summer as any club will probably planning, especially ourselves. So, we're going to have to see what we've got at the club. And, there's young players in and around the squad who've got, and they'll never get a better chance to stake their claim. You could, make some new Premier League players in this 9-game sort of mini run. I think the right-hand side is, Walcott's got that injury and it's going to be more long-term. So Anthony Gordon, I know he's not a natural right winger, but, young players need to grasp at any opportunity they get. That could be his window. Beningame could be his window with the centre midfield situation. Jared Brandthwaite with the centre-back scenario. Moyes Keane, probably more so than anyone. All right, he's not going to be playing wide, and our 2 first choice strikers are currently fit. Fingers crossed. But they're not going to play every minute of every game. You've got to protect them, so Keane's going to get minutes as well. So it is an opportunity. It's just a bit disheartening that the first game is against your local rivals who don't get any injuries. Let's be honest. But once that's out the way, it could be very interesting. Suddenly we could have players there who we've not even considered up until now, and then all of a sudden they're a realistic option.
Well, as for Walcott, like you say, it's another big blow. He's the only out-and-out right winger in the first team. You said maybe Gordon could play. Iwobi we've seen on the right, and that wasn't too impressive either. Who else could maybe fill in at right wing? I know Sidibe's played there as well, but is there anyone from the under-23 who plays on the right who maybe could make the step up?
I don't think so. No one who's been mentioned. I think before it got that severe, I think Anthony Gordon is the one. Like we've seen Iwobi, we've seen Bernard play on the right, but it's a really ill fit. I think we'd see Sidibe there before we saw either of them too. But young player in Gordon, I think that's Gordon's window, because he plays up front, he plays off the left, but we've got, at the time of recording, you never know with Everton, but the time of recording, there's no injuries at left midfield or up front, so that's not going to be an easy path for him to get in, even with these games coming up, because there's not just players who are fit who are starting there. There's other players who are going to be coming off the bench. So if I'm Anthony Gordon, I've got my sights firmly set on that right midfield position, because he'll be going for it against other players who would be out of position if they were there. So it would have to be Gordon, or, I've seen other people say play Richarlison on the right and put Keane up front, which, would bring something, because Keane and Calvert-Lewin would be really good for Keane, because I think he'd get, space and the minutes that he needs, and he played well. They played well as a 2 against Newcastle, where we threw the 2 goals now, net at the very last minute, but he had a really good game. So I think we'd see that in patches, but I wouldn't like to start too many games like that, because I think that's moving your best player to accommodate someone else, and I'm not really into that. I'd only want to see that if we got, touch woods, any more injuries.
Yeah, I think that's the last thing we want, is certainly. But there is one thing worth asking, though. I think I touched on this in the Gbamin one when he got injured, but no one seems to have picked up injuries quite the way we have. Why do you think we're suffering more? Is there a fitness issue, do you think, with the squad? Or is it just bad luck?
Part of it is luck. I don't think it's anything we're particularly doing. You never know, but I would think it's probably more just, it's exposing the type of squad we've got. These players who are getting injured, there's a reason that it's not a lot of, who's injured? Gbamin,
Delph,
Walcott and Schneiderlin.
Yeah.
There's a reason it's not Tom Davies, it's not Calvert-Lewin, it's not Richarlison, it's not Keane. We've got older injury-prone players, or like Samina, who people consider him injury-prone, but he spent all this season being pretty safe from injury. So poor recruitment, I think it is. Like Walcott is older now, Schneiderlin's older.
He's always had a bad injury every season.
Yeah, Walcott's had injuries his entire career. Schneiderlin is picking up injuries more frequently now. Fabian Delph, come on. Like, he was crocked when we bought him. I think that was a terrible piece of business, but, we've gone over that one before. Ancelotti must be looking and going, God, we've got some injury-prone players. And I think it's going to be something he'll be making a big note of. There's a lot of players I can't really rely on over a full season.
I think it's imperative that, I think, looking forwards and in terms of recruitment, that we look at players who have clean injury records, because that's the thing that derails our season almost every time.
Yeah, he's probably learned that by now, Ancelotti, that when it comes to, Gbamin's got this long-term injury, he can't be looking at Delph as a potential, step in for him, because he gets injured a lot as well. So it might just be a case of, well, who am I going to, trust next season? Because next season, let's be honest, it's going to be, not just for us, but for everyone, a consolidation season where, there'll be a little bit of business done here and there, but it'll be more about just working your way through what you've got, getting all your methods and, Ancelotti's sort of style built into the club. And then, the summer after, a lot of players out of contract, FFP will be a lot healthier and start to build on top of that. But, I hate making this comparison, but it's an apt one here. Liverpool did this with Klopp. He had a year where he had a terrible squad. So he just sort of went through it, built around the young players who he wanted to keep and wanted to build around, got his methods in there and established. And then all the players who didn't fit that and didn't work, they had to find themselves new clubs when the time was right. And I think we'll do similar. But he's learned already, Delph, Schneiderlin, Walcott probably aren't players who he's going to be, investing a lot of his time in. He'll be looking at, well, I'm going to work around Calvert-Lewin, I'm going to work around Richarlison, I'm going to work around Luka Dean, Holgate, what have you, because professional or good players or what have you, or not, if the player's injured after season, you can't be banking on them.
Well, I think that's the most important thing to take away from this. I think we've had far too many players getting injured, and if you'd ask me, I think a lot of the time it comes down to players who, you look at people like, we've levelled this at people like Schneiderlin and that in the past, players who maybe aren't used to working hard, who've been worked harder by another manager. You spoke about Liverpool with Jurgen Klopp, and he's obviously come in, he's a taskmaster, he's made certain players work hard, and players were constantly getting injured. Daniel Sturridge, for example, players who, maybe couldn't hack a heavier training regime with more intensity.
Yeah, there's a few outliers, like Gbamin is just like a freak occurrence.
I think that's just rotten luck, Gbamin.
Yeah, but Walcott and Delph, who's surprised they're getting injuries? They've had injuries all their career, and not to say you can't use these players, but let's be honest, next season's probably going to be their last season at Everton. Let's be honest, whether they're phased out and just squad players who don't play after that, or whether they're sold or what have you. But obviously next season it'll be more about. I hate using this comparison because everyone does it, but I think it is apt. Like Klopp did almost the exact same thing as what Ancelotti needs to do. Half a season, come in. The next season, you can't really put high expectations because it's not his squad. With Everton, it'll be even less his squad than it would have been because we can't obviously do a lot of business. Even the little bits and pieces we do might only be temporary. But it will give him a chance to establish, to sort of put his stamp on the young players who he's going to build around, the Richarlisons, the Calvert-Lewins, and sort of phase out. Use what you can with Walcott and Delph, but after that, they'll probably be replaced because they can't be trusted to a full, forget about their quality. Let's be, no one thinks they're good enough to go forward, but injury-wise, they can't be relied upon because every time you need, let's say Delph, for example, he gets injured. Delph was going to start. The second Gbamin got injured, Delph was guaranteed to start, and he suddenly got injured. It's not his fault, but it's just a consistent thing that the man, Carlo Ancelotti, a manager of that calibre, is going to identify straight away. This is a player who can't be relied upon due to injuries.
I think we can't rely on him due to his poor performances as well, if this season's anything to go by.
There's that as well, yeah, let's be honest.
I think it's a real blessing in disguise if he misses the derby.
I would have thought that if we hadn't got all the other injuries, because if you ask me who would want to play in a 4-4-2, Sigurdsson or Delph, even though I'm not the biggest fan of Delph, I'd still have Delph over Sigurdsson.
I think you'd have Klaus Thompson over Sigurdsson at this rate, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's get that game out the way, and whatever happens, and then we can start to have a look, with a lot less pressure on, can Beningame, at a second attempt, establish himself? Can Anthony Gordon live up to this, promise that he's displaying so far? It could be very educational. One of the few clubs who, Europe's still there, but a lot of clubs in the way, and we've still got to play a lot of them, and we're not really in too much danger of going down. Touch wood. So we're the most comfortable club outside of Liverpool, obviously, who can sort of, look at players now like an Anthony Gordon or a Beningame or a Branthwaite and see whether they're worth having, because they could save you a lot of money. If Gordon comes in and smashes it, you're suddenly not as eager to get a right winger, because if he nails that position down for himself, and same with a lot of other players.
Definitely, and also it's not very often we see players from the under-23s getting game time in the Premier League, not just at Everton, but at any club. And I think we're not going to be able to afford these big money signings like we have done recently. So it might be a time, dare I say, it's a half back to when Moyes was manager, when he'd always give a few kids a run out a season and sort of introduce them to first team football, wouldn't he?
Well, yeah, but I think the big thing is not even so much the effects of the coronavirus. I mean, that will help. There'll be less signings and there'll be more games thick and fast in this rest of this season. But I think the biggest thing as well will be the fact that we've got a manager now who I'm pretty sure, as much as you can be, won't be getting sacked 18 months into his contract like all the others have.
Absolutely.
Because Moyes could do that because he was so safe in the job and, had such a level of consistency that he could do that. Whereas I don't think, Marco Silva or Ronald Koeman felt secure enough to really go with young players. They were always a couple of games away from the sack. But I think Ancelotti has got so much credit in the bank with supporters and the owners and what have you, that even if we're having a bad spell, I don't think he's going to. I don't see him being sacked. I think he'll see out his contract, which is a rare thing in football now. Maybe even extend it. Obviously, you never know, but I think he's got a lot more of a solid footing to play young players and not have to worry about the impact, because Marco Silva especially wouldn't play young players because he was too scared of what bad results would do to him.
And obviously it's done it to him anyway, so. Well,
yeah, but I mean, managers who don't feel secure will revert to type, to try and protect themselves. But I think if Carlo turned round and he started Gordon and Keane and all these young players but lost the match, I don't think there'd be anyone putting out pressure on Carlo. They'd all just go, right, well, that's what he wants to do, and that's, who are we to argue? He knows what he's doing.
Well, fingers crossed. I think obviously the derby is a difficult one, but moving forward, there's winnable games there, isn't there? We need to pick up a few points and maybe relieve that pressure a bit, and then hopefully that's the opportunity then to start picking these kids and see what they're made of.
Yeah, I mean, you can't make any predictions about the form because I don't know what's going to happen. We're so poor away from home that there's every chance we could fall off a cliff with no fans there. I think our team so far has needed the Goodison crowd to get them through a lot of games.
That's what I think as well.
So there's every chance we could be poor, like when we come back, and but there's every chance as well that other teams are even worse. So we're not poor and we suddenly play a lot better because the pressure's not on. I don't know. I don't want to make any predictions about winnable games and what have you, but you'd like to think that we'll win enough games to not be worrying at any point, because we're already 10 points above the relegation zone. So I'm not anticipating any stress, but you just can't count your chickens because it's an unprecedented, set of circumstances.
Certainly, I think. So before we finish, what kind of impact do you think these injuries will have on the team? Do you think it'll be a blessing or a curse, or?
I think the derby will be horrible. It would have probably been horrible anyway, but it's gonna hurt a bit more if we're struggling in centre midfield, knowing that we've got all these injuries. But after the derby, I don't think it'll be a problem. I think, under the assumption we don't get any more, or we don't get any serious ones to any key players who I won't name for sake of jinxing it. But after the derby, I don't think it'll be as bad. I just think it's a bit of a sickener because we're getting all these injuries before this game. And, we know what's riding on it. We know what could happen, and I don't think anyone's up for that. So if Liverpool was the last game, I think everyone would be a bit like, oh, that's a shame, but oh well. But because it's the Liverpool game, you know, you want as fit a team as you
We've
can.
been waiting for footy to come back for 3 months, and this is what we have to anticipate.
Yeah, exactly. But, you know, Delph, Mina, Gomes, these aren't players who currently are predicted to have long injuries. They just might miss this game. Or in Mina's case, miss a couple of games. The only ones we're out without for a decent stretch will be Walcott and obviously Gammon. But that does, again, provides opportunity for young players because there's going to be a spot at right midfield and it's wide open in central midfield because, let's be honest, one of those players is going to play alongside Gomes and, you know, they need to nail it down because no one's got, you know, there's no guaranteed starter amongst them apart from Gomes in central midfield for me.
That's true. But that means Sigurdsson on the right wing then, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, why not? At least he'll wear both his socks.
That's one of them. At least he doesn't have to put a tackle in, maybe. That's the one thing.
Yeah.
I think I saw a GIF before, and it's just one guy with a sword getting attacked, and it's like Tom Davis when Sigurdsson's hiding behind the corner flag.
I don't know. If we'd have had the derby before this, I wouldn't be, or it was the last game, I wouldn't be as bothered. But it's just typical, isn't it? It's like I wonder who'll get injured in the derby because you know someone will.
Someone always does.
Well, it certainly will now.
Yeah, there you go. It's just Everton, though, isn't it? It's terrible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
terrible. But it's Everton.
My thought, exactly. Yeah, it's terrible, but it's Everton. Exactly.
Oh God. Well, that's where we'll finish on that. We'll finish by anyway. Wish the injured lads obviously a speedy recovery and fingers crossed that that's our lot for injuries from now until the, like Terry said, inevitable injury in the derby.
Yeah.
As always, guys, give us a comment. Let us know your opinions on how you think these injuries will affect us. Maybe how we can make the most of the players who we have fit and like maybe what kids could seize the opportunity. If there's anyone you've got in mind, let us know. Give us that comment below. Subscribe for more great content as well. And of course, thank you for watching on the Toffee Blues. No, no,